All right, Alan, this is exciting. We're going to do a whole series of these conversations
I can't
around
wait. I
marketing.
can't wait.
I know, and you even cleaned up for me this morning.
I
It's too
cleaned
bad that
up
people
and
can only hear
let's
you.
talk at the same time so nobody can understand us. I'm ready.
All right. So, the goal of this series is to really have conversations about our new book, Masterful Marketing, and to provide value to our listeners in terms of, some of the things we talk about. So it was interesting. This morning, I went on your forum, which is one of your marketing tools, and I saw the story about the Rolex advertising and the golf tournament. So can you talk a little bit about that? Talk about, brands and marketing and what your thoughts were on the picture of Tiger and Rory with their watches.
Yeah, let me give you a good example and a bad example, and then I'll get to the golf thing. Here's the good example. American Express forever, it seems, had a mantra, don't leave home without it, right? Very clever. However, 3 years ago, whenever the pandemic hit, no one could leave home. So what did American Express do? They changed the damn sentence and they said, don't live life without it. Brilliant, because people are now sitting at their computer over the pandemic, ordering things online, and they still are. Don't live life without it. That's a brilliant change, right? Mm-hmm. Now, before that, Miller Beer had a slogan that said, it's Miller time, which meant about 5 o'clock, work was over. It's Miller time. However, because the Miller brand wasn't strong enough, people would say, hey, it's Miller time, let's have a bud. And so it was the exact reverse of what Miller Beer wanted. Now, in this golf tournament, you're talking about the British Open in St. Andrews, it concluded over this weekend. So Rory McIlroy, who is technically Norwegian, believe it or not, but he's competing and he's a great favorite at the crowd. And on every tee in the Open is a huge Rolex clock. And next to the clock is a Rolex ad. And so Rory McIlroy is standing in front of the clock and the ad, looking out from the tee because he's waiting for people to clear so he can tee off. And it's a perfect camera shot for Rolex. He's standing next to him and he has his arms crossed. And on his arm, you can see an Apple Watch. And somebody sent me a photo from a couple of years ago of Tiger Woods standing next to Rory. And they were each representing a watch company, but each of them had on somebody else's watch, the both of them. And my feeling is, Harry Cohen used to have, the great impresario on film used to say, he who eats my bread sings my song. If I'm paying you to boost my product in public, you better be using my product.
Right.
And so there you have one of the ironies of marketing, and that is that there has to be consistency and people have to believe it. One more example. You got this McConaughey, this actor?
Yes.
Matthew McConaughey, is that it? Okay.
McConaughey.
Yeah, I mean, you're a woman, you'd be more interested than I am. Anyway, they got him advertising Lincolns, and he's driving Lincolns, and he's jumping into pools over Lincolns. I'm not making this up. That's part of the ad. He's not driving a Lincoln. He's driving a Rolls or a Bentley, in his real world. So who believes this?
Right.
So, if you're looking at influencing people through marketing, it's got to be believable and it's got to be a through line.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's kind of like watching some of the women who advertise for skincare lines that are purchased in the local grocery store. There's no way that they're really, what is it? Aveeno? I'm sorry. Jennifer Aniston is not using that brand.
She's not going to CVS.
No, she's not going to CVS. But, it was interesting. What I do want to talk a little bit of a celebrity who I think has done something quite masterful, and that is Jennifer Lopez. Jennifer Lopez got married to Ben Affleck this past weekend.
Yeah,
and do you know that she has a website called On the JLo, and you have to subscribe to that website in order to be the first to know what is going on in Jennifer's world. So before the media knew that they got married, all of the subscribers on her website received a newsletter from her signed Mrs. Affleck with pictures of them getting married in Vegas. Now, I think that's brilliant because she is building a massive mailing list, which means she is in control of marketing her brand directly to the people who most want to know what's going on with her and her world. I think that was really smart.
I do too. And I think J-Lo is very talented. I'm tired of hearing about her and Ben that goes back 20 years, for God's sake. But I think she's a very talented woman. I think she's a role model for a hell of a lot of people. Mm-hmm. Now, somebody who I think, you might disagree, is sort of close to J-Lo would be Beyonce. Mm-hmm. But I happen to hear, I don't follow either one of them, but I hear more about J-Lo than Beyonce. And I think that's true for most people. I think J-Lo comes across, despite her celebrity status and her great talent, as far more approachable, as far more realistic. And I think people really admire what she's done. And so doing this subscription thing, right, is brilliant stuff, because she says you want to be part of the club, you have to pay your dues. You know, what you said before about the makeup is hysterical. It's because my wife, who you know, is still furious over an ad from years ago. There was a model called Christy Brinkley. And Christy Brinkley, you know, gorgeous model, well, she's doing a makeup commercial. And she says, now first you would put on foundation, she says. Is that the right word, Lisa, foundation? Yeah. She said, first you would put on foundation. But she says, but of course I don't need foundation. And so my wife throws a shoe at the TV screen. It's just not believable, right?
Right. It's like her right. Today she's advertising for the, I think it's SBLA wand. It's like some type of an anti-aging product. And you can see how pulled her face is from all the plastic surgery. And she's trying to make you believe that she's never done anything to her face, and she just uses this wand. It's hilarious.
So anyway, I think you're absolutely right that if people are sincere and believable, but consistent, right, people will tend to follow them.
Right. And I think that, you know, one of the things that I like about the J-Lo example is J-Lo is adopting a marketing strategy that is tried and true. It's not a trend. Any business owner, any brand, any influencer today needs a direct line of communication to the people that are interested in what they do. You and I both know this. We have email lists. We were just talking about our upcoming fireside chat and how we have, you know, 600 plus people registered for that fireside chat. The vast majority of those people registered because we invited them through email marketing. And so email marketing isn't one of those things that you just sporadically do. It's a consistent, ongoing way of communicating to your audience and building up your capacity to communicate with more people, which I think is far more effective than chasing the latest trend on TikTok, for example.
I want to ask you what TikTok is, but I will continue. So look, I tell people that it's never too soon or too late to build your brand. I'm still building my brand. You know, I've been doing this for 30 years. And I think you have to constantly invest in your brand. And when people buy into your brand, they trust what you say. They trust what you do, and they want to follow you. And by the way, the only thing worse than not having trust is having trust and losing it. So you have to consistently make sure that your brand is solid and true and that people believe in it. And when you do that, people will come and people will tell others. And this is the chain reaction of attraction that I talk about and that I've trademarked. So that it's not just a matter of you attracting people, but people you attract still other people. And that's really what viral marketing is. Now, one thing I will pick up on that you said that's always interested me, this is the age of the influencer, right? And so, I mean, we didn't have this 30 years ago. And so you have influencers on social media who are making millions of dollars. But I mean, that's not the point, what they're making. The point is whom they're attracting for the people who are paying them to be influencers. And it's interesting to me because I think for the people listening today, this is the power of normative pressure. And normative pressure really means peer pressure. It means wanting to be part of the group, wanting to be in the in crowd, not missing things out. And this explains things as crazy as the pet rock, right? To things as contemporary as modern fashion. And so you have people who dress stylishly because influencers tell them or suggest it, but you have other people wearing their baseball caps backward and using their hand to shield their eyes from the sun. I mean, which is ludicrous, especially if you're over 25 years old. So, but you know, social pressure, normative pressure is very important these days. It can't be ignored. But even then, it's more legitimate than Matthew McConaughey driving a damn Lincoln, because people believe in these people and they believe in J-Lo, and fair enough.
Mm-hmm. I think it's also important to recognize that a lot of things start as trends and then become tried and true. And when you're doing your marketing and you're thinking about how to market your business, your brand, it's important that you pay attention to the trends and discern whether or not it is something that you want to participate in. So people could say that, podcasting was a trend when people first started podcasting, or they all said social media was a trend when Facebook started. And then over time, as it got more traction, people started to see the opportunities that they could experience if they adapted some of these tools and tactics into their marketing plans. So how do you discern what is a tried and true practice versus a trend? And are there any things that you thought were trendy at the beginning, but you now see value in?
Well, look, the litmus test is, does it work over time? Does it work with diverse people? Does it work in a variety of circumstances? So let's just take, my particular expertise. Many years ago, you had management by walking around. You had transactional analysis, you had open book management, and all this kind of crap. And it all went by it all left. On the other hand, Drucker created strategy in the 50s. And until maybe the last 5 years, that was the same strategic process everybody was going through. Now it had to change because of radically different times today. So what I look at is, how many different people can this positively affect? And does it have legs? Does it have traction? Does it have any kind of longevity? So trends either peter out on their own. Nobody has pet rocks today and nobody's doing hula hoops for exercise. Or they become subject to investigation and examination. So, people doing yoga continue to do yoga, right? Hot yoga, I don't know, maybe not. But there are all different trends in exercise today. I go to the gym and I find people lifting weights as I do. I find other people doing ridiculous exercises, but a lot of workout, a lot of gymnastics has gone to the aerobic side and to the core strength and things like that. So, I thought that there were some things that wouldn't last, but they have. And I think that, some of those things include how people really learn and how people really apply things. So, for example, you don't really change behavior in a classroom. I love when people say we're doing a training. Aside from the grammatical, hideousness of that sentence, the fact is that what does last is when you get a hold of the next level up and you help them understand how to coach their people to apply what they've learned. And that consistently works. It doesn't mean everyone consistently does it, but it consistently works. Mm-hmm. Is this what you're asking me? Is this what you wanted?
Yeah, for sure. I know, though, in the very beginning, like early stages, because I've had people say to me, how on earth did you get Alan to agree that there was value in social media? Now, I know that you are not a believer that social media is the primary focus for lead generation and attracting buyers and all of that. But I remember when we first started working together and we marketed $1 Million Maverick. And we did a fairly heavy marketing strategy using social media, and that book performed exceptionally well for you. So that to me is an example of a trend that maybe you weren't completely bought into, that you saw utility in for a specific reason. Would you agree?
Well, yes, but you have to consider something very important, that I am in the retail business today. And the people I advise and coach are in the wholesale business. That's an important line of demarcation. Right. And so you're quite right. Everything you said is quite right for me in the retail. In fact, right to this minute, your people recycle, repurpose a great deal of what I write. And one of your people told me, said, you're getting an excellent response on LinkedIn and wherever they put these things. And sure enough, I see messages to me and this and that. And so that works excellent for me. I think it works excellent for people in retail. I think that in wholesale, I was dealing with a corporate market. It's still a question of getting on the radar screens of people who will talk to other people. It's evangelism. I think social media can play a part, but I think, on my website, I sell things because I'm in the retail business. Other people in the corporate business, their website should be a credibility statement. They should be testimonials and so forth, but you're not going to sell things there. Real buyers don't troll the web in corporate America. So I think that's a distinguishing feature here. And what's disturbing to me is that we all have X amount of time. So the question is how you allocate it. And I can see people in the corporate world doing some things on social media. I mean, if they're doing Facebook for fun, okay, fine. I don't find Facebook much fun, but all right. But I don't think they should kid themselves that this is my marketing here. I don't have to leave my seat. Right. They have to be out there networking. They have to be out there speaking. They have to be sitting in the seat publishing. And I don't think you disagree with that.
No, I don't. And I think that sometimes people get too caught up in trends and shiny objects, and they potentially make fools of themselves. So reels on Instagram right now, these short form videos that are under 90 seconds are very popular. And I think, your video series, A Minute with Alan, the short form video content is very popular right now, but it needs to be effective in terms of the value that you are conveying to others. When I see people dancing on Instagram and pointing at chat bubbles and looking about as uncomfortable as somebody who is, going on their way to the electric chair, it tells me that there's a lack of congruency between your marketing and your behavior. And so I think that it's important that if you're going to look at trends, that you not try to chase what everybody else is doing. One of my favorite sayings is something that Sally Hawkes had said in her book, Fascinate: different is better than better. And you are very much that way, Alan. You're contrarian in a lot of what you say and do and think. And I think that when people are just following what other people are doing without using their mind to think, does this make sense? They're not being masterful in their marketing at all.
Well, that's right. Well, it's called being derivative. And so, after Chicken Soup for the Soul came out, and I know both those authors, they're extremely good marketers, these two guys. Mm-hmm. But after that came out, you had, a pea soup for the kidney and all this kind of crazy stuff, right. And so people tried to be derivative. Didn't work. Not one of them worked. But the guys who wrote the book, they did Chicken Soup for the Teenager, Chicken Soup for this and that, and they all worked because they were the guys with the credibility. And I find that's what you have to be looking at. And so it's this question of legitimacy, and it's a question of no cognitive dissonance. So,
yes. Yes.
In the morning, I quickly go through the social media outlets just to see what's going on and if anybody's looking for me, right? But I stop for a minute on LinkedIn because it just makes you feel so much better about yourself. You scroll down and you see this crap, right? I mean, look, if you're making a video, go back to your point, and your hair is in your eyes, and there's a mirror behind you, right? So people see the back of your head, and your chyron has spellings in it and so forth. Who on earth would want to follow you or use you or consult with you, right? And so you've got to be consistent with what you're talking about. As you know, I come from the world of professional speaking as well. And when you sit there and watch a speaker who's 80 pounds overweight and divorced 3 times and has a drinking problem, and they're telling you to take control of your life, it's not highly credible.
That's right.
And so if you want me to use you, I have to see an appearance. If you want me to buy the Rolex, you got to be wearing one.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that a lot of people are doing things that I love what you said about cognitive dissonance, because you see people doing things that are not aligned with who they are, and then they wonder why their marketing isn't effective. And so I think, the key message that we want to get across in this particular episode is that trends are trends, and they're not really valuable unless there is value that you're creating in a way that makes sense for your buyer. I had a conversation with a couple of colleagues last night about TikTok, and we were talking about, trends on TikTok and whether or not it's time to put content on TikTok. And before you make that decision, one of the things that you need to do is you need to look and see, are your buyers actually hanging out there? And I agree with you, Alan. Corporate buyers are likely not hanging out on TikTok. And if they are, they're likely hanging out on TikTok from a form of entertainment.
If they are, they ought to be fired.
Now, having said that, I do know that there are people on TikTok that are getting corporate business. So there is a young woman on TikTok. Her name is Miss Excel. And she does all of these cool videos teaching people how to use Excel. And corporations are hiring her to actually come in and train team members on how to use Excel. So the message has to match the marketing, and it has to match what the buyer needs. The medium has to match where your buyer is.
Well, let me say a couple of things. First of all, there are always exceptions. I have a phrase, I never argue with success. So somebody says, I made money doing this, even though I don't recommend it, I'm not going to argue with you. If it works for you, it works for you. But the exceptions always prove the rule. And the thing is, you have to watch who you follow here. So just because somebody was able to get corporate business on TikTok or some other crazy thing, doesn't mean that's for you, doesn't mean that's the way to go. Damon Runyon had this great phrase, the great Broadway writer. He said, the race isn't always to the swift and the fight isn't always to the strong, but that's the way to bet. And so you go with the odds. And the thing about a trend, what you've been bringing up is this. In the long run, you have to ask yourself, is there a utility? Is there an applicability that makes me want to use this every day? Is it applicable or applicable if you prefer to be incorrect? And so can I use this day by day? And you can use a lot of what you learn day by day. And so it becomes ingrained, and it's no longer a trend. It's a habit, it's a trait, it's a behavior. But otherwise the trends just dissipate because they're not useful day to day. So why should I continue to use them? What was this thing, Clubhouse?
Mm-hmm. It's
Somebody,
so
well, but it's irrelevant. It's totally irrelevant. It's for people who just want to scream. It's for people who want to go to a dive bar, but don't want to get out of the house, right? They don't want to leave the house, so I'll go to Clubhouse. Somebody convinced me to be on, begged me to be on it. He was going to be my host or whatever the hell it is. And you come up to some stage, I forget what it is, and the software didn't work right. But basically everybody was screaming. And he invited people up who I never heard of, who have no credentials, and on it goes. So it's an ego thing. Now, if people want to play in Clubhouse, that's fine. If people want to play in a sandbox, I don't care. But don't tell me that's the way to get business. Because even though in the exceptional 1 in 10,000 chance you get it, that's not the way to go.
Right. I think what's important is that you consider the trade-off. We all have a finite amount of time, money, and resources to put towards our marketing. It is important that you are paying attention to what works and what doesn't work, and that you're not trading time from something that is effective in your business to do something that is trendy. Because when you do that, you run the risk of actually losing the effectiveness that you have from the very thing that you're doing. I was reading on your forum today about podcasting, and I saw someone mention on the forum that they do podcasting sporadically. They publish every 2 to 3 weeks when they feel like it.
Right.
That's not effective marketing, because now your audience has no idea when to expect to hear from you.
Well, I said, look, if you want to do a podcast, do a podcast. If you like it, do more. If you don't like it, stop. But my God, this whole superstructure, this whole configuration, make things easy, not difficult. And I think that your point about our time and our energy and our resources is right on target. The question is how we allocate them. Mm-hmm. And how we allocate them for the greatest effectiveness and for the greatest reward for ourselves. And that reward isn't always monetary. It's free time, and it's a lot of different things. So consequently, the difference between a good coach and a great coach is this. A good coach says, let me tell you how I do this, and I've been successful. A great coach says, let me tell you how you can do this and be successful. So I can tell people, here's how you, knowing you or anyone else, here's how you could best write a book. But if I say, well, let me tell you what I did, I can write a book in a month. I've written 60 books in 15 languages. Why don't you do that? That's zero utility. Mm-hmm. But if I say to you, here's how you can write a book, here's how you can get a publisher, take you 4 or 5 months, that's realistic. And so we have to look at what's realistic for any individual. Consequently, just hooking on to someone who you see is successful, but it's an exception, is not helpful. You have to ask yourself, what's within my range, my talents, and like you say, my time and my energy commitment.
Absolutely. So to summarize, don't chase trends that are not proven and or that are exceptions. Do your due diligence, evaluate your own marketing, and look at the strategies that are the most effective for you and your business, depending on whether you are in the wholesale or the retail business, and double down on the things that work, not on the things that are ego validating or vanity metric oriented. I had this conversation with someone yesterday. I said, I really don't care how many likes I get on LinkedIn. You can pay people to like stuff on LinkedIn. What I care about is the results that it helps someone get in their business.
Well, I'm not as eloquent as you, but do you know why my German Shepherd does not chase his tail?
No.
Because he's too smart to do that.
There you go. Be like a German Shepherd. Be smart enough not to chase your tail.
There you
All
go.
right. Thank you, Alan. All right, everyone. Stay tuned for next week's episode. We are going to talk about referrals and recommendations and how you can use referrals and recommendations as part of your marketing strategy to grow your business. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.